We are now in Daniel chapter 1, verse 11. Reading from the King James Bible, quote, "Then said Daniel to Melzar, whom the prince of the eunuchs had set over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah," unquote. Comparing with the English Standard Version, quote, "Then Daniel said to the steward, whom the chief of the eunuchs had assigned over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah," unquote. Comparing with Young's Literal Translation, quote, "And Daniel saith unto the Melchizar, whom the chief of the eunuchs hath appointed over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah," unquote. Now, let's look at this verse in context. It is a new paragraph in the chapter. It goes from Daniel chapter 1, verse 11, through the 14th, reading from the King James Bible, quote, "Then said Daniel to Melzar, whom the prince of the eunuchs had set over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, Prove thy servants, I beseech thee, 10 days, and let them give us pulse to eat and water to drink. Then let our countenance be looked upon before thee, and the countenance of the children that eat the portion of the king's meat, and as thou seest, deal with thy servants." So he consented to them in this matter, and proved them 10 days, unquote. Now, you always want to read several versions that are worthy to be studied, then read your verse in context. Now, remember, we had studied through verse 10 already, and we know that, first of all, the chief or prince of the eunuch was Aspenaz. And now we have Aspenaz appointing over them Melchizar. Now, in verse 10, the prince of the eunuchs talked to Daniel and told him that he feared what the Lord would do to them had he changed what was appointed for them to eat and drink, so he's afraid what the king's going to do. Then, we now find that Daniel is now talking to Melzar, whom the prince, Aspenaz, of the eunuchs had set over them. So we have one talking to him, and not another. And we also see in this verse that Daniel is referring to him and his friends by their Hebrew name, not by the name that was given to them by Nebuchadnezzar. So that's something to take note of. Let's go ahead and parse this and see what's going on in the Hebrew language. Then said. Now we're going to go ahead and parse this out and see what we can get out of that. So then said. Parsing is a quell stem, which is a simple or casual action. It's an imperfect aspect, which is a process or condition which is incomplete. So then said Daniel to Melzar. Now let's take a look at this person. Okay, so the then said is an incomplete casual action. Daniel to, now Melzar. Melzar is not a name of a person. It is a name, a title given to someone who is in charge of. So it is like your manager of your hotel. Manager is not his name, it's the name of his position. So we have guardian, steward. I don't even know where the word Melzar came from, because it supposedly shows up in verse 11 and 16, but where it comes from, I do not know, because it is not in the Hebrew. When you look at the interlinear Bible and you look for this word in there, it's not there. So it's a title that is given to the person who is in charge of their food and their wine. So Aspenaz has delegated, apparently, to this person who's in charge of this what to do, and now he's the person speaking with Daniel, not Aspenaz anymore. So I do not know why, but this is what's going on, And the King James Bible and others are now giving this title. So instead of manager of the hotel, they're just saying manager. Or in this case, the person in charge of their food and the wine is called a melzar. So that's where this word comes from. Whom the prince of the eunuchs had set. So let's parse out had set. The Hebrew word is apinel, which expresses an intensive or an intentional action with a perfect aspect, expresses a completed action. So this is an intentional completed action. All the eunuchs had set over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So as we notice, Daniel is using the Hebrew names here. Now, that's what we're going to get from the parsing out of the Hebrew language for this particular verse. Now let's see what we can get from John Gill's commentary on this and see if he comes up with anything different or if his conclusions are the same. I'm going to read it. It's one paragraph. Then said Daniel to Melzar, the prince of the eunuchs, having put off Daniel with the above answer in verse 10, seems to have left off, or, however, Daniel, finding he could not obtain of him what he sought for, applies to Melzar, a subordinate officer, whom he hoped to find more pliable, and it may be that as Peniaz might suggest it to him to apply to this person, and signify that if he could prevail upon him to give him other food instead of the king's, who might be under temptation from profit, being a meaner officer, he for his part would wink at it, so be it. He came not into any danger himself, however. Be it as it will, Daniel did apply to this man, whose name was Melzar, for so must take it to be the proper name of the man, which according to Hilarius signifies one, quote, in full splendor, unquote. Josephus, no, we're not going to quote from him. Josephus is quoted as a historian, but he was a traitor to the Hebrew nation, so I'm not quoting for anything from this man. I don't quote from traitors, no matter what. So far, John Gill thinks this might be his proper name, but according to the dictionaries, it is a title given to a person who is over the food and wine. That makes more sense to me because we don't have anywhere where this is the name of the person in the Hebrew language. So we're going to go with it's a title to this person, but whoever he is, he deserves his title. So we will refer to him in this verse and in verse 16 as Melzar in the King James. Okay? So there's where we are so far with this verse. That's what we can get from it. Let's go on into verse 12 on the next recording to see what's going on and what Daniel is trying to give us. May God richly bless you as you go about your way studying the Bible and learning how to draw closer in a personal relationship with God, which is what He wants for you. This is Dr. Peter John Parisis with Discovering the Scriptures. If you like this, please go down below and subscribe, and also hit the bell. That will signify to you when there are other new recordings. Thank you, and keep us in your prayer as we do this production.